Hey, it's the Wells Fargo. It's Andy filling in last minute. Um, just me and Ron today talking some DFS. A lot of contests, I'm guessing, because we have the second event, but we'll focus mostly on the Wells Fargo here. Quick, Ron, how you doing today?
Good. Yeah, good to see you, Andy. Yeah, this week it's one of the rare times the week before a major that we actually get a difficult course that's going to be very similar to what players are going to see at Valhalla next week. And so I hate the small field. I think it needs to change for next year. Like I was looking a few minutes ago, and like there's no reason a guy like Minwoo Lee, who's 34th in the world, that he shouldn't be playing this week. But I love this course. We got no Scheffler, no Aberg, and wide open field.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm glad they put the alt event for some of the other guys to play, but I don't love the smaller field stuff. I like maybe it's because I like matchups and I like to be able to cash that. I don't like no cut. I don't like no cut events. Never have. I like to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff and cash some money on a Friday. And it does make it goofy for the weekend too. So there's always the guy that's dead last, finishing 70th, but it's also a goofy spot for these guys. It's like, well, I'm making money. I'm getting a check no matter what as soon as they step on the tee box on one. So hopefully they kind of veer away from this rather than leaning into it going forward. I can stomach it a couple times a year, but I don't need more of it. And yeah, you talked about the schedule. I kind of looked at that. 6 weeks. 6 weeks here. We have two majors, two elevated events, and honestly, the RBC Canadian's a good event too. That's another fun one because it's a we don't have a lot of events like that where they move it around that aren't majors. So that's a cool event. And then I think the Chuck Schwab's in there too. No offense to the Charles Schwab, but that is sixth out of sixth on the power rankings for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, and this course, it's a big boy golf course, as everyone knows. Bombers off the tee. You have 85% driver usage on the par fours and fives. You combine that with 301 yard average driving distance. Fairway accuracy only 54%, so that kind of speaks to the bombs away nature off the tee here. You have a lack of hazards. The rough is not that penal, and so yeah, kind of targeting long iron players from 175 plus yards. Scrambling, you're going to have a lot more scrambling attempts with greens being missed, and these are some of the toughest greens on tour, so you do need to putt well here, and it's just an every club in the bag type of course.
I had a question, and it kind of made me think about this a little, and I'm trying to think back what the other ones were. Have there been two no cut small fields so far?
I think this is the third or fourth, maybe the third.
Yeah,
I know there's been a
that's
few.
from that's where I'm trying to think if there was a third. I know there's been at least two. Um, but yeah, have
I
you
know.
ownership? I get the question is around ownership. Like, have we learned anything from it? Those early ones where we have the smaller field. We know that there's no cut line, and honestly, we've had this in the past. There's other events like this. The Masters is not too dissimilar, with only a handful of guys missing the cut every year. But have you had any takeaways from those other events with the ownership on those events?
I think it's just completely different this week with no Scheffler. I think what I'm looking at
Yeah,
right now is for DraftKings, it's pretty spread out across the board. You've got Rory, you've got Xander in the 20s, and then you've got a bunch of guys who are right around that 15 to 20% range. With Wyndham Clark around 19%, and you got some lower guys. Tommy Fleetwood I think is a little overpriced at 9.5 this week. He'll be a bit of a leverage play, but there's just so many guys in the 8K range. When you look at Tony Finau at 8K flat, there's no way I'm going to pay 1,500 more for Tommy Fleetwood when this is a perfect course for a guy like Tony Finau. So, yeah, it's an interesting week from an ownership perspective because of how spread out it is. And for me, I'm playing a lot of lineups this week, and it's hard to fade certain guys because you got these guys at the top of the board, and then you got the mid-range guys that all fit as well. Yeah, just looking at the top here, like I'll go to Rory McIlroy, who I think the Zurich. I don't know what you feel about that team event, but I think it was big for his psyche and just kind of having fun playing the game again. Of course, we've got all this drama off the course still happening with, him being on the board and whatnot. But, this is one of his go-to tracks. And he doesn't have Scheffler or Aberg to deal with. And so there's really no excuse for him, not to contend this week.
Agreed. Yeah, the Scheffler. I hadn't thought about that when I posed the question. Like anything you learned from those other events, like Century, AT&T, the other one, it kind of goes out of the window a little because we don't have Scheffler here. And I'm like the phenomena we have with baseball now, where they bring in the starter and that guy just pitches like one inning. That's all I needed to do because Byron is here, model maniac. He has arrived. I'm bowing out, letting him talk some DFS. So I'll bid you guys adieu and welcome in Byron.
Thank you so much, Andy. It looks like I'm lagging a touch there, but I didn't want to let you blow your elbow out there, Ron. Sorry for showing up a touch late. It is the week before the PGA Championship, so I got overbooked a little bit on my side. So massive apologies from there, but we got the Byron show finally 6 minutes in.
Yeah, good to see you, man. I love the shirt. So we're at the top of the board here. So I'm curious, I know you see, obviously Scotty, Ludwig this week. Ownership looks to be pretty spread out across the top and even going down. Like there's a lot of good value. I think you'd agree in the 8K range this week. So yeah, I'm playing these top, when you look at the top here, Rory, Xander, Wyndham, I'm kind of doing what I do and spreading it around the top of the board here. I think both those three, especially Rory, maybe a little more fun in his game off the team event, maybe in a little better spot mentally. I think Wyndham is maybe my favorite play. Just I think he's still getting disrespected here a little bit. He kind of, when he won here last year, he's pretty much a top 5 player in the world since that win. And so, this course fits his game perfectly, but I'm heaviest on Rory and Wyndham here. So interesting to hear your take top of the board.
I mean, I like all three of them. I just love the fact that Wyndham's 10-5 and going to be the same ownership as the others, like an extra $1,000 just to toss at a bunch of other good names. Like you can really get a bunch of better players just by sacrificing that $1,000 over there. So I'm not playing too many lineups this week, Ron. I'm going to be doing the single entry thing. So I'll just be kind of biting the bullet on the Wyndham value and then kind of trying to make sure I figure out my guys lower down. So that's that. So yeah, do you want to host the show? Let's let you continue this, Ron. I'll be the answer this time around.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. I think Wyndham. What are you seeing for ownership? I'm seeing 19%. I'm thinking that's going to jump up a little more. Maybe you see something a little more right now.
Yeah, I was seeing around 2021, but I was seeing the same stuff for Rory and Xander essentially too. So I'd imagine they kind of drift down and Wyndham catches those percentage points as people are kind of pivoting off of them when they realize it's too expensive.
Yeah, so like this, when we get to this 9K range, I'm seeing some guys like I was telling Andy, like, when I see Tommy Fleetwood at 9.5, and then I look at the 8Ks and I see, Tony Finau at 8, I see Justin Thomas at 8.5, and I can understand why Fleetwood's definitely going to be probably the lowest owned up here. I know some people love his game. We all know he has not won a PGA Tour event here in the U.S. yet. So he's a guy that even with the leverage, I'm not going to play. I think Cantlay is another guy who I just don't know what to expect from him. This is a course that, should fit his all-around game. But when I see this value, when I go down and I see a Max Homa who is sitting there at 9.4, he continues to thrive on these long classical courses that demand ball striking and touch around the greens. And obviously, maybe not at the top of his game so far this year, but, he's finished 3rd at the Masters. He was 8th at Bay Hill. Both of those are long courses that play very similar to Quail Hollow. And of course, he won here back in 2019, finished 8th here last year. And if we're looking at a 69-player field and, no Scotty, no Ludwig, I think he's got a great chance to contend again this week. And so he's my favorite play down in the 9K range. And then I'm pretty sure you're going to be on Thigala at 9.1. He's improved his off the tee game, as to the point where, he's gained 8 of his last 10 events off the tee. He's up to 298 yards with his driving distance. In his last 3 months, his driving accuracy is all the way up to 69%. So I think people are just kind of, I know he's popular, but when you dig into the numbers, he's got 5 top 10s this year alone. And he's doing it in strong fields at signature events. And I mean, he's got the long iron play. He's gained over 15 strokes putting his last 5. And so he checks all the boxes this week. And he's another guy like Homa that I think he's going to be in contention on Sunday.
Ron, you don't need me on the show. You are spitting fire. Like I've said it before, I love it when other people speak beautiful stats and numbers to me about a guy I like, and Sahith and Max both. I mean, Max Homa, just give him a smidgen of confidence after a T3. Yes, he had like a really bad 12th hole, but this is Max Homa. This guy's like won multiple times at golf courses like this one in particular. And when he's in mixes, he gets it done, man. So I'm in. I've got an outright on him and Sahith this week. I'll be rostering them both. I think, let the fireworks commence, baby.
Are you playing any Victor Hovland yet? Are you gonna kind of wait and see how he does this week?
I don't know. You see, especially in the single lineups, I'd rather just take a gamble elsewhere, at a cheaper price. I know what you can get from Vic, but it's been bad, Ron, just across the board.
Yeah, I agree. I think this course does fit him. I think, going back to his old coaching, it's kind of tempting, where he's had a little bit more practice time recently, and he's a guy you want to be early on, but again, you just have so much value, right in this area. So, I mean, looking at even this upper 8K range, like who you going to here, you got a lot of past, major winners here. Hideki, Matt Fitzpatrick, you got Justin Thomas sitting there. Who are you biggest on this week in that area?
Yeah. I see Andy is telling us to mention that Justin Thomas has got a new driver this week. He's got a new caddy this week. I mean, by the end of this month, he might have a new wife. Who the heck knows what's going on? But new stuff is good stuff. I think, especially when JT was going through a bit of a struggle. I think anything new, and we saw some revitalization gained across the board at the RBC Heritage, which was good to see from him there. I like his game to translate very nicely to this kind of a venue. This is what he typically does well, is these kind of courses. He's cheap. He's potentially found a whole new supporting cast. I'm in on Justin Thomas as a cheap option here in the 8.5 range with some Fitz love. I'm in on Fitzpatrick this week as well. Got an outright on him as well. I think just the volatility that you get from this guy. It's like both sides of the spectrum are either going to hate him or he's going to be right in the mix. So at a difficult course, I like his chances.
Yeah, and Hideki's just like really interesting. Again, he's sitting there at 8-9, and you and I both know he could win this event very easily. He was 4th overall in my model this week, and so can't really say anything bad about him and his. We can talk about long irons and touch around the greens, and again, if he putts halfway decent, I think putting does matter this week. If you look back at the last 6-7 winners, they're gaining tons of strokes putting. And so these greens are tough. And so guys who kind of can be consistent, even as we're talking the 5 to 10 foot range, if you can just make those saving par type of putts, I think that's key this week for a guy like Hideki. And, Cameron,
just picking with Hideki, it's not even like he needs to putt well, because he can chip well and win this thing. Like, he's so good at chipping right now that if he misses the green, like getting up and down for par is likely not even on his mind. He's trying to hole out. Like, he chips in so often. Like, you don't want to bet matchups against Hideki Matsuyama. He will make you want to rip your eyeballs out, because he just scrambles so well, and you're going to have to at this kind of a golf course.
Yeah, and on the rabbit hole, which again, if anyone listening out there has not been to yet, again, we have all sorts of stats that nobody else has, and one of them is around the green proximity. So we always talk about proximity to the hole from an approach, but also when you're chipping, who gets it closest to the hole. And when we get on these tough courses that have tough green complexes, he is in the top 5, and on many different types of filters you could use, but he's a guy who just, makes putting easier for himself by how well he can chip. And so, yeah, I agree with you with that, all that you said. And I think Cam Young, I know he's picking up some steam here. I mean, he was built for courses like Quail Hollow. And so you get him on these major like courses. He kind of continues to perform. Again, just finished 9th at the Masters. He's the 3rd best player in my model off the tee, 10th best on approach. One thing I really honed in on this week is, Quail Hollow has some of the toughest par 4s on tour. And so when you look at other courses that have difficult par fours, he is the best player in this field on those holes. He leads my scoring model, which includes par fives, and he's also 17th in bogey avoidance on tough tracks. And so I think this AK range is just loaded. Like, I agree with you on Fitz. When we get difficult courses, he's first in bogey avoidance. When you get strong fields, he's 8th best. And I don't know if you've checked the weather. I just happened to look a couple hours ago, and looks like we got some windy conditions these first couple of rounds. And so whenever I see the wind picking up, I automatically go to Fitz. And so I love him. And JT, yeah, like even when JT's form isn't great, like I know he just finished 5th at the RBC last start, but whenever we get these no-cut events, JT's like an auto play for me, even when his form's not great, just because of his upside, because he's typically going to have a bad round, but his potential at this course where he won the PGA Championship, in 2017, I think is pretty immense. And so you'll take those other 3 upside rounds. And I'm also pretty sure, like, you could just see when he's been struggling that, like, I'm pretty sure there's nobody that's been outworking him off the course. You can see kind of his desperation to kind of get back to the top. And so I think he's so playable at 8.5 here. And yeah, like going down to the bottom, I really only have, obviously I'm pretty sure you're not playing Jordan Spieth this week, even though I know you tend to play him every week. You can correct me on that, but I know you're out. Okay.
I've been riding that low-owned Jordan Spieth roller coaster into the tomb every Friday, so it's not worked out. So I'm done with that nonsense now.
Yeah, I'm fading Henley also. I think when you look at his course history here, I think when you get Henley in a wedge fest, I think that's perfect for him. When you get here, when you have so many long irons, and not that he's bad with his long irons, but I just so much prefer. Benny On, I love him. And this is my range. Like, you get to Benny On and Finau down here, I'm going to be living with these two guys. I'm talking maybe 50% for both of these guys. Benny's a bomber. He's got the ball striking. He's got the touch around the greens. His putting has improved. And I think you'd agree his first PGA win is probably coming very soon. It's almost like a Wyndham Clark situation for me. They're very similar in that, he could take off if he can get a win this week, just like Wyndham did. And then, Tony, top 5 ball striker in this field. Again, you get Tony on these long, difficult tracks, 6th at the Farmers, 2nd in Houston. And yeah, he just thrives on these driver heavy courses that demand elite long iron play.
Last 12 months, I've got Tony Finau ranked as the #1 strokes gained approach from a weighted perspective for this golf course. He's incredible with the irons right now. And that driver has been fitted to him now, Ron. I just don't understand how, as a PGA Tour professional, you play with a driver that's not adapted to your swing speed. Like, that should be like the #1 thing you decide to do. So I'm glad he's figured that out. Love where you're going in this range, though. I've been betting Benny On to win these tournaments like crazy, Ron, and I've left him off the card this week. I'm going to have to just like lock him into DFS maybe then, because like I'm scared. I don't think he's going to win a big boy event like this, but man, it suits him nicely, right? So we'll hopefully finish the second. I'd be scared if he wins. So yeah.
All right, so dropping down here, the 7K range now. Let's talk about this Zalatoris price, 7.9. I think it's a laughable price. I think he pretty much admitted that he wasn't really hurt. I think you talked about this as well. He clearly kind of overscheduled, and with the major coming next week. And so, again, we're back to where we were with, top 4 player in this field when you look at difficult courses, strong fields, long courses. Each one of those 3 that I have in my model this week, all 3 of which you can look on the rabbit hole, and he is in the top 4 in all of those. And he just raises his baseline in these strong field events that have, tough, long courses. And so, look at his finishes this year: 9th at the Masters, 4th at the API, 2nd at the Genesis. And so it's, I'm surprised. I don't know what you're seeing. I'm kind of seeing 12 to 15%. I'm really surprised it's not higher, but I mean, he's almost a must play at this price, in my opinion.
This is, I would argue, a more egregious misprice than Minwoo at Bay Hill. What are we doing putting him here at $7,900? Is it because of the back injury? Is that literally it? Because I can't think of why he'd be behind the likes of these other people. Like, Sungjae, Brian Harmon, Russell Henley, Siwoo, they've been playing well, but Willie Z's like been balling, so I'm in, Ron. I'm locking him in my big entries. I've got Willie Z in there. Like if you go Wyndham Clark, Willie Z, those are you've probably saved like $2,500, based off what you could price those guys at and not actually bat an eye. So then you go and you pivot off of those other four guys.
Yeah, and I'm like my core this week. I'm thinking about Wyndham Clark underpriced, Max Homa sitting there at 9.4 underpriced. Zalatoris at 7.9. Like you still have like 7,500 left, and who do you? So after Zal, so taking let's see. So we got Corey Connors, Jason Day, Adam Scott, Sam Burns. So just like kind of everybody, I think, just found out this morning that his wife actually had the baby recently, and so. He is here. He said he's had a little sleep, but we all know how that could turn out this week with, his play after having a baby. And so taking it down to Shane Lowry, any of these other guys that you are playing this week?
I mean, on Adam Scott, I like what his metrics tell me. He's, for an older guy, he's like you, Ron. You'll show some youngsters up on the court or in the long driving distance department there. So Scotty at a venue like this, he makes lots of birdies and his short game around the greens is not the best, but he still kind of does his thing around here. And his distance off the tee just makes him so appealing at this price. So he's been top 20ing like crazy as well. He's a very, very safe-ish kind of play. So four rounds with him is nice. I'm really interested to see what Bezzy's driver gets up to. We've chatted about his distance, like trying to find some distance. And I feel like this is the golf course that you will see if he's been actually working on something and has a bit more left in the gas tank, because there's no reason to hit 3-woods or soft drives at this golf course. Mash the driver, Bezzy. I said one of my bold takes for the week is that Bezzy eclipses like 290 in ball speed or driving distance average this week, which is crazy to think about, but he's like averaging 285. So if he can let it rip a bit more this week, his iron play is good enough. He's chipping, he's driving, he's putting. It's all very good to see. I'll be playing a bit of Bezzy at this price here. Maybe Shane Lowry too. I don't know, but mainly Bezzy.
Yeah, so for me, Corey Connors is another guy that just real consistent. One of the best total drivers in this field, 6th best on approach, 2nd best in long iron or on long courses. And he doesn't have the greatest distance, but for some reason, when he gets to these long tracks, he performs well above his baseline. He finished 8th here last year. And just kind of looking at little things, little tidbits on him, his last 2 starts here at Quail Hollow, he's gained 2.7 strokes putting. And so whenever you see anything positive on the greens from Corey Connors, that kind of gets my attention. And so I love Adam Scott. Watching him last week, had an outright on him. His ball striking was tremendous, at TPC Craig Ranch, but he just kind of kept putting himself in position. He was just off the green, or he had these awkward putts and just couldn't sink enough birdie putts to keep up. Still finished at 15 under. But if you're looking for a guy who, hits bombs off the tee, top 10 putter in this field, and he is one of the also really good with his long irons. 5th here last year, kind of had his struggles at Quail Hollow, and then last year finished very strong. And so he's another guy who kind of fits the profile I'm looking for. And so, yeah, as we get down to the bottom of the 7K range, a lot of young guys. We look at some guys who have been maybe a little more inconsistent lately. Some guys who are maybe not as strong off the tee when we get into, a Denny McCarthy, a Billy Horschel, Tom Hoagie, obviously not great off the tee. So this is probably the toughest range for me to figure out this week as far as who I like. So curious to hear who you love in this range.
I'll be going back to Tom at this price. What I learned from my buddy Sweet Spot, that he does like this optimal thing. He looks at the optimal lineups every single week. Siwoo Kim was in there. He finished 12th. 30% of the field had him. Like the thing is, he was just too cheap and too safe of a play. Like the top 10 wasn't there, but he was still in a lineup that would have won you tons of money. So Tom Hoagie, in my opinion, who's been top 20ing like absolute crazy this year, he's also been doing well at courses that he struggled at in the past. Like he's hitting the ball so well that he's overcoming bad course history at some venues now. And I think at $7,200. He's not going to like finish inside the top 10, but he could be that Siwoo Kim that finishes 12th, 14th at $7,100, $7,200. He's one of the better value plays, I would say, in this range. And I did forget to mention Steven Yeager. He's so good, Ron, out the rough from 150 and out. Not the greatest long iron player from the fairway, but you're hitting the fairway every other time, yeah. So half the time when you're out the rough, he's going to be better than the majority of the people in the field. And then in the fairways, not the greatest, but still hangs in there. And his putter tends to pop and suck and pop and suck. So he'll kind of find his way there, here and there, but he's a boom or bust guy, you know, top fives or top like 45th. You know, that's just what you're getting from Yeager, but I love his potential.
Yeah, I agree with you on him. I think Yeager and Bhatia sitting right there at 7.5. I think they have immense upside. I think even a guy like, you know, Yeager, who played here last year, got some experience on this course, finished 27th. Obviously Bhatia, you know, grew up in North Carolina, played this course some. Won here back in 2018, you know, kind of when he was on the junior level. So I'm kind of a little bit in on those guys. For me, though, I'm kind of dropping to the bottom part of this range. I think Billy Horschel is a sneaky play this week. You know, obviously he just won, and Corrales didn't seem like a course. You know, it's driver heavy. Didn't seem like maybe the best fit for him, but he won there. He's also won at a place like Muirfield Village, which, you know, is another course that demands positive long iron play. And so, you know, we all know that, you know, when Billy gets hot on the greens, you know, especially we got, you know, Bermuda, his best surface kind of coming through. It's kind of a blend between Bermuda and Poetry this week on the greens. And so I think Billy's a really interesting play with some upside. And I sent you a message that I was done with Tom Kim, and I looked this week and he's sitting there at 7K, and I'm looking around him like, okay, who has upside down here? Who has win equity? And, you know, this is a longer course, maybe not the best fit, but I might be going back on what I said to you. I might be coming back to him one more time here just because of that upside potential. And I think he's getting more familiar, you know, with Paul Tesori, his new caddy. So you know, ball striking, you know, putting, you know, I think the upside in both those areas, you know, is enough for me. I worry about the distance off the tee a little bit, even though he is making small gains in that area. But I just think he's a guy who, as a last man in your lineup, I think you could do worse than a guy like Tom Kim. Yeah,
Ron, he's broken my heart. You know, I've ridden the Tom Kim train to two outrights with the guy. You know, I love him. It's just I've been betting him outright a lot lately too, and it's not being good. So I don't know, but the price tag 7,000, you know, for someone that can literally just win any given moment. And we've seen Max Homer, Rory, all these guys, Ricky, a lot of them have had their like signature win of their early career at this venue. It doesn't translate very well for him, but you know, he plays well on these big boy courses sometimes, and I'm almost kind of keeping him in the pocket just for next, like Valhalla kind of thing. I don't know, in a major, just he seems to do his thing. I'll leave him alone. I'll do the first guy in the sixes run, Ricky. I've never thought I'd be saying this, but like the irons are moving the last 6 rounds of golf. They've been very good, and going to Quail Hollow, where this guy's got like incredible track record. So I bet him top 5 at plus 900. Like, why the hell not? You know, let's see what he can get up to. Yeah, it's barely investing anything to kind of get some high upside there. He's had some good performances after being very poor to start the year. He might have found something again. So love Ricky Fowler. Eckroat, you know, he's been the opposite. Since Ricky's been playing well, Eckroat's been playing bad, but we can expect Eckroat's irons to bounce back. I think he's a good course fit here too. And just double backing on Billy Horschel, leads the field in weighted green regulations. Poor shots. He's 4th in green regulation rates weighted. So he's going to be just keeping it safe, Ron. You know, that's what he does, and it's impressive. So $6,500 guy, Mathieu Pavon, is also mispriced, in my opinion. I'd imagine he'd have to be somewhere up in the 7s. So I'll be playing him. And then Griot. I mean, he's been playing like ass here and there the last little while, but at this golf course, he plays some steady golf at $6,300. And then my final guy I'm going to be playing is Grayson Murray. Tons of distance off the tee, really tidy around the greens. Those are 2 very important things at this golf course. The iron play is going to be left to be desired, but the other 2 are pretty good. So I'll hang my hat on those at $6,000 flat. So Yeah.
Yeah, I'll bring up Keegan Bradley here. At 6'9".
Mhm.
When I look at the key stats for this week, 19th in driving distance. He was 8th in my approach model. When you combine difficult courses, long courses, strong fields, he's the 16th best player in this field if you look back 3 to 5 years. So, obviously he hasn't been performing well lately, but again, at 6'9", you're looking for upside here. You're looking for a guy who could pop, and we all know Bradley has that potential. And so, I think Kurt Kitayama is a guy who, when you look at this range, I think he's a value play with definite upside. He won at API, a similar track, signature event, had a really good field. Kind of a bomber off the tee when you look at his numbers. And, this is a no-cut event, but he's only missed one cut in the last 11 months. And I was stunned to go back and look at that, at his, you kind of have this viewpoint of him as kind of this inconsistent guy. But, in the last 7 months, for example, he's finished outside the top 40 only one time. And that was just incredible to me. And, you look back 35th at the Masters, 19th at the Players, he was 8th in Phoenix. And so, digging into those numbers has me probably made my favorite value play, Kurt Kitayama. And you look at a guy, let's see here, Jake Knapp. So 6'5", weak field aside last week. Seeing him perform well once again on a long driver-heavy course kind of has me sold on him this week and even in the future on these types of tracks, even in these strong fields. And, everyone talks about his length off the tee, but his approach game is very underrated. He's gained on approach in 8 of his last 10. And I will round out my 6Ks here with Cam Davis, who, kind of a guy who is always up and down, and he's had a slow start, but seems like he's turned it around. He's got 4 top 20s in his last 7. And I ran a little thing on the rabbit hole. I'm looking at approach from 175 plus yards on difficult approach courses where it's hard to gain on approach. And he is the best player in this field over the last 3 years on these difficult approach courses with his long irons. And so, that's just an interesting nugget there. And just finished 12th at the Masters. So I think he's a guy who fits the profile. And I think there's some names you said I think could. Maybe I'll sprinkle a little 5% of Matthew Pavon, a Seamus Power who has some good course history here. It's an interesting week. So I take it you are not multi-entering. You're going a little less on your lineups this week.
Yep, that's typically what I try and do in the signature events with Scotty in them usually, but I'm just going to keep going with it this way because I'm not going to be playing Xander and Rory. I'm just going to kind of go heavily involved with Wyndham and just kind of do 2 or 3 lineup situations. So that's kind of just how I'm feeling it this week. We'll see. I'm heavily involved. I do like a 33 single, and I had Sungjae in that last week, so I need to have redemption this week. So I'm going to be hoping for some returns there.
All right. So let's see. If you had to pick one, who's your favorite low owned leverage play? Could be any price range. You just got one guy who's, we'll say, sub 10% for sure, that just you have a feeling about this week.
Yeah, Tom Hoagie. Is Tom Hoagie? I think Tom's sub 10, I'd imagine, because the course history is pretty atrocious.
Yep, I'm saying 8%. So yes.
And what you'd call 5 to 8% semi leverage, because this field is only 69 people full of good golfers. So trying to find a 4%er guy, you're going to have to really cling on to guys that aren't playing good golf right now. So 8% is not terrible. How much money are you planning on keeping on the table, Ron, in your lineups?
Yeah, so that, I kind of go back and forth on that. If I can get enough low-owned guys, if I'm filling the back of my lineups with, and I've done this with some already, where I have Keegan Bradley and Kurt Kitayama as my bottom 2, and they're both sub 10%. I'm seeing Keegan Bradley about 5-6% right now. So if I have multiple low-owned guys, I'm not really worried about leaving anything on the table. I think it is smart though if you start playing some of these, I think balance is going to be hugely popular this week. When you got Tony Finau and Zalatoris and Justin Thomas, I can see a lot of people going balance. And so if I'm building a lineup in the AKs, which is very possible this week, and you just kind of ignore the whole top of the board, I think then you probably want to start thinking about, maybe putting 500 or something, leaving on the table. And yeah, I'm just gonna say I'll go. You said Hoagie. I'm gonna go Keegan Bradley as my guy this week. Seeing that 6% ownership, I think the upside is there. I think he fits this course, and so I'll take my chances with Keegan down at the bottom. So yeah.
I mean, that ownership disparity is not that much considering how much better Hoagie's played this year.
Yep.
So
Agree. All right, my man. Anything else you got this week? I know you've been doing podcast after podcast.
I survived the gale force winds yesterday. That was fun.
Yes, I
Oh
saw.
my
Was
God.
that an actual tornado or just kind of a?
No, I've never seen one, but it felt like it was the wind that comes before a tornado. It was like howling, Ron. So trying to do a show when you're getting blown 50-mile-per-hour winds on the side of town, it's fun. But been a good week. Looking forward to the PGA Championship next week, and enjoying the summer weather now. I know you're up in Michigan, enjoying the warmth too. Do you play much golf, Ron?
Yeah, I was out yesterday, so we had some rain in the evening. But kind of this time of year, you're dodging raindrops, but you get temperatures getting up there into the 70s, and so there's some good courses here, and so it's fun to get out there. And I got the net set up in the backyard, so we're getting all that put together. So if you're not following Byron on Twitter, he is one of the guys. If you're looking for data, if you're looking for some humor mixed in, he kind of brings everything to the table. So the Model Maniac, so make sure you're following him. And if you haven't checked out the rabbit hole yet, we still got some deals going on with Vivid Picks. We got some other stuff in the works. We've got player pages, tournament pages coming for the rabbit hole. So we're kind of adding everything that we need to hopefully be the best golf site out there. So that's coming in the very near future. So but Byron, good to see you. Good to get into this week. We got a big week next week with the PGA Championship. We've got probably, with all these live guys, the best. I would say he might be the best major all year with what we've got shaping up. So
we need it, Ron. We need some good golf on TV, baby. It's been a tough stretch since the Masters and the RBC. So I'm looking forward to some quality golf and some quality courses.
All right. Well, that's it for us. Check out Byron's stuff. I'll have some more stuff coming out on betspursgolf.com later in the week. And we will see you next week for the PGA Championship.